Today we uncover a story of professional deceit that still haunts one woman's life. This is the invitation to Fractured Trust, a docuseries drawing Mara Ellis into confronting her betrayer, Theo Calder. Lurking behind the sessions of confession and reflection is the cold truth. Trust's betrayal erases who you are. You will remember this. Mara's fingers hovered over the keyboard in the dim glow of her laptop screen, the apartment silent except for the faint hum of the city outside. She hadn't checked her email in days, weeks maybe. Avoidance was her armor now, a fragile shield against the world that had once validated her every word. But tonight, restlessness pulled her back. The inbox loaded, sparse as ever. Bills, spam, and then it. An unopened message from an unfamiliar sender. Subject, Invitation to Fractured Trust series. She clicked. The words stared back, terse and clinical. Ms. Ellis, we're producing an intimate docu-series exploring betrayals in journalism. Your story with Theo Calder fits our narrative. We seek raw, unfiltered perspectives. Participation involves 3 sessions: confession, confrontation, reflection. Compensation offered. Reply by Friday. Her breath caught. The fracture. Theo's face flickered in her mind. His easy smile during those late-night edits. The way he'd whispered, "We're unbreakable together," before leaking her sources to the highest bidder. The scandal that followed had stripped her bare. Headlines calling her naive, her bylines revoked, friends fading like echoes. Who was she without that trust? A ghost in her own skin. Anxiety coiled in her chest, sharp and familiar. Accepting this meant stepping into the spotlight again, microphones probing the wounds she'd barely stanched. What if it exposed not just Theo's deceit, but her own gullibility? The lie she'd clung to, that her worth hinged on others' belief in her, would shatter anew, pieces scattering like mirror shards underfoot. She could delete it, retreat to the quiet corners of her unraveling life, silent as the empty chair in her therapist's office. But the craving tugged harder, a quiet ache for sense amid the chaos. To speak it aloud, to trace the crack in her identity, might knit something whole. Dr. Lila's words echoed. Trust starts inside. And Amara, steady Amara, had texted last week. You're still you, Mara. Don't let him erase that. Theo loomed, a shadow she couldn't outrun. But this series, it promised a reckoning on her terms. She glanced at the inbox, now empty again, save for that one blinking cursor in the reply box. Waiting, like the void after every unanswered question. Who am I if not endorsed? Her hand trembled as she typed a single word. Interested. Then hesitated, finger poised over send. The light from the screen cast her reflection in the dark window, fragmented and faint. To step forward meant risking the light's glare, bearing the self she'd lost. Or was it? As the decision settled in her, Mara turned from the screen, her gaze falling to the floor where, in the quiet aftermath, she began to confront the fragments of her shattered sense of self. Mara's fingers hovered over the jagged shards scattered across her apartment floor, the mirror's remnants glinting like accusations under the dim lamp. Each piece caught a warped sliver of her face, eyes hollowed by exhaustion, lips pressed thin against the chill seeping through the window. She traced the edge of one fragment with her thumb, the same hand that had once gripped Theo's notes in blind faith, passing them into the light of their shared investigations. Now, the glass bit back, a sharp prick drawing a bead of blood that smeared across the distorted reflection. Anxiety coiled in her chest, tight as the knot she'd ignored for months. What if these shards were all she had left? Theo's betrayal stared back from every angle, his voice echoing in the fractures, whispering how he'd twisted her truths into his own narrative, leaving her exposed, unraveling. The fear surged. To speak again, to bear it in the interview, meant risking that raw edge all over. Her pulse hammered, breaths shallow, the room's stale air pressing in like an unseen audience. But she didn't pull away. Instead, she knelt closer, the cool tile grounding her knees. The sting in her thumb sharpened her focus, a tactile anchor pulling her from the whirl. She picked up a shard, turning it slowly. In its curve, her face steadied, less fractured. Theo's shadow lingered there, but it blurred as she angled it toward the light. No more hiding in silence. She set it down and reached for her notebook, scribbling the details. The date of his confession email, the cold click of her recorder capturing his lies. Threads of the story emerged, knotted but traceable, as she prepped for the session ahead. Her mind drifted to Amara, that steady voice from their last call. "You're still here, Mara. Whole, even if it doesn't feel like it." Distance from Theo felt instinctive now. A deliberate step back, while Amara's words tugged her forward, a quiet invitation to lean in. The dependency hit her then. The lie she'd lived, that her worth hinged on his nod, his trust. But this, her own hand steadying the shard, whispered otherwise. A first inner voice stirred, faint but insistent. She could weave these pieces without his gaze, without anyone's. Resolve bloomed, warming the anxiety's grip into something firmer. She gathered 3 shards, aligning them on the table. Not perfect, but hers. The interview loomed, not as exposure, but as reclamation. Could she piece herself together, unjudged? The question hung in the air, unanswered. As she pressed record on her phone, her voice breaking the quiet. Let's start from the beginning. With the pieces tentatively aligned and her voice captured in that initial recording, Mara soon found herself stepping into the structured space of the docuseries, where the past began to unspool before her eyes. The camera's red light blinks like a hesitant heartbeat in the dim recording room. Mara sits alone in the booth, the microphone hovering like an uninvited confidant. Her fingers hover over the play button on the console, then press. Archival footage crackles to life on the monitor. Grainy, intimate shots from 2 years back. There she is, younger, sharper-edged, leaning into Theo across a cluttered desk piled with notebooks and coffee stains. His voice fills the speakers, warm and approving. "Mara, this angle, you nail it. Your instincts are gold." She watches her past self smile, absorb it, bloom under his gaze. The knot tightens in her chest, a slow twist of anxiety coiling from her gut. The footage rolls on, seamless at first. They pore over documents together, her voice overlapping his in excited bursts. This source confirms it. Trust me, Theo. Cut to a late-night edit session, laughter threading through the hum of the tape recorder spinning beside them. Praise and partnership, woven tight. But then the frames shift, the betrayal seeps in like developer fluid on film. A hidden clip she didn't know existed. Theo alone, voice low into his own recorder, twisting her leads, her truths, into something disposable. Mara's too invested. It'll sink us. The words land like shards. Her breath catches, anxiety spiking, heart pounding against ribs, palms slick on the armrests. How did the same tape hold both? The reel inside the machine whirs softly, a mechanical witness uncoiling the past, pulling her deeper. She pauses it, stares at the frozen image of their faces inches apart. Observer now, not participant. Who is that woman in the frame? Not just Theo's echo, but something more. Her own questions probing the edges. A faint voice emerging. This was mine too. The anxiety eases into a tense realization, sharp as the tape's edge under her thumb. Distance from him solidifies, a mental step back. In the quiet, she thinks of Amara's steady texts, an unspoken anchor waiting. Trust isn't borrowed. It's this, her own testimony flickering on the screen. The red light blinks on. Mara leans forward, voice steadying. Let's start. But the question lingers, unanswered in the air. Can she see herself beyond him, whole in the unspooling frame? As the archival review lingered in her mind, Mara sought deeper introspection, turning to the therapeutic space where her internal fractures could be voiced without judgment. The office smelled of chamomile tea and old books, a quiet sanctuary under the weight of afternoon light filtering through half-drawn blinds. Dr. Lila Shore sat in her armchair, legs crossed, her notebook balanced on one knee like a shield. Across from her, Mara Ellis perched on the edge of the couch, fingers twisting the hem of her sweater. An empty chair stood between them, a silent sentinel in the room's center. Theo's absence made manifest, or perhaps her own. Tell me about the invisibility, Lila prompted, her voice steady, a gentle nudge into the void. The small tape recorder on the side table hummed softly, its red light blinking like a watchful eye, capturing every fracture. Mara's breath hitched. Anxiety coiled in her chest, tight as a spring, pulling her gaze to the floor. She could feel it rising, that familiar panic, the one that whispered she wasn't real without eyes on her, without belief anchoring her down. When Theo pulled away, she started, words tumbling out jagged. It was like the ground vanished. Not just anger, I felt erased. Like if he didn't trust me, I didn't exist. Her voice cracked, but she pushed on, no pause, no retreat into silence. The confession clawed its way free, raw and unfiltered. Lila leaned forward slightly, observing, her eyes a mirror without judgment. And before Theo? Has this feeling shadowed you longer? Mara's hands stilled. The empty chair seemed to loom larger now, its upholstery worn from other ghosts, inviting her to sit with the absence. She imagined Theo there, his betrayal replaying in the creases of the fabric. But it wasn't him. It was her, the version of herself that dissolved under withdrawal. Always, she admitted, the word heavy. Every time someone turns away, I collapse. Their faith is my outline. Without it, I'm just nothing. The anxiety peaked, a storm in her throat. But as the words hung, something shifted. Realization flickered, faint as dawn. Her voice, steadying, its own timbre echoing back from the recorder. Not borrowed, not endorsed. Hers. Lila nodded, the tape whirring on. You're naming it now. That's your outline emerging. Mara met her gaze, the empty chair no longer a threat, but a space to fill. Could she draw her own lines, without their gaze to hold her? The question lingered, unanswered, as the session's pulse slowed to quiet breaths. Emerging from therapy with named fractures, Mara returned to her apartment, where the pull of the external world drew her to examine Theo's public facade more closely. Mara's apartment hummed with the low drone of her laptop, the screen casting a pallid glow across the cluttered coffee table. Scattered notes from therapy, a half-empty mug of tea gone cold. She sat cross-legged on the worn couch, remote in hand, the cursor hovering over the play button. Theo's face stared back from the thumbnail, sharp-jawed and composed, as if the betrayal had polished him rather than tarnished her. Her finger trembled slightly. Don't let him in, she thought. Not like before. This is my watch, my terms. She clicked play. The interview unfolded in crisp cuts. Theo in a sleek studio, voice steady as he fielded questions about journalistic ethics, his latest project. An expose on corporate leaks that echoed their old collaborations too closely. Trust is the foundation, he said, leaning forward, eyes earnest. Without it, the whole structure crumbles. Mara's stomach twisted. Wary now, she paused the video, his words hanging like smoke. Was this deflection? A subtle rewrite of their history, positioning himself as the victim of mutual misunderstandings? Her mind raced, dissecting every inflection. He's casting shadows again, she realized, glancing at the window where late afternoon light slanted across the floor. Theo's paused image throwing an elongated silhouette that seemed to stretch toward her, encroaching on the space she'd claimed as her own. The shadow lingered in her thoughts, a reminder of how he'd dimmed her once, made her doubt the clarity of her own reporting, her own worth. Fear prickled, urging her to close the tab, to retreat into the silence Amara had warned against. Don't let him ghost you twice, her friend had said over coffee last week, voice firm. And Lila in therapy, witness yourself first. Mara exhaled, unpausing the feed. No more hiding. She watched him pivot to regrets, his tone softening. I let ambition blind me, he admitted. But it rang hollow, a performance without the raw edge she'd once mistaken for vulnerability. Her pulse steadied. This isn't surrender, she thought, the wariness sharpening into resolve. Theo wasn't the man anymore. He was archive footage, a fixed point she could circle without orbiting. She jotted notes, not accusations, but boundaries. What she'd expose in her own series, what she'd bury for her peace. The shadow receded as the video ended, his face fading to black. Mara leaned back, the weight lifting. How to see him clearly without yielding an inch? The question echoed, unanswered, but she felt the fracture mending, her reflection whole in the darkened screen. In the wake of dissecting his image, a knock at the door brought Amara's presence, offering a relational anchor amid the isolation. The steam rose in lazy curls from the mug Amara pressed into Mara's hands, the porcelain warm against her chilled fingers. They sat in Mara's dim apartment, the kind of quiet space where shadows clung to the walls like unspoken regrets. Amara had shown up unannounced, a paper bag of groceries in one arm, her face set with that stubborn gentleness Mara both craved and feared, whole even with the cracks. Mara's throat tightened. The warmth seeped through the mug, spreading to her palms, a quiet insistence against the cold isolation she'd wrapped around herself. Theo's face flickered in her mind. Not the man, but the archive. Clips on her laptop, his voice a distant echo she could pause, rewind, control. No more orbit, no more pull. She set the mug down, the clink sharp in the silence. I don't know how to do this without expecting the fall. Her words came halting, raw, the confession pulling at her like a thread unraveling. Amara reached out, not touching, just close enough to bridge the gap. You don't have to know. Start here. Let me help with the next interview. Record what you're ready to say. On your terms. Mara nodded, slow, the wariness easing into something softer, an acknowledgement, tentative, that safety might exist beyond the betrayal's shadow. She pulled out her tape recorder, the device humming to life under her fingers. As she spoke her first fragmented thoughts into it, the tea cooled beside her, its warmth lingering like a promise. But deep down, the question hummed unanswered. Could she hold this care without it slipping through her grasp? Strengthened by Amara's support, Mara turned inward once more, rehearsing the confrontation that loomed, her voice finding firmer ground in preparation. Mara's apartment hummed with the low buzz of late afternoon light filtering through half-drawn blinds. Papers scattered across the kitchen table like shattered glass. Emails, timestamps, blurred screenshots of Theo's fabricated sources. Her hands trembled as she pinned them down with a coffee mug, the ceramic cool against her palm. She couldn't let him rewrite this. Not again. The tape recorder sat in the center, its red light off, waiting like an empty chair. Mara stared at it, her breath shallow. What if he twists my words? Makes me the fool who trusted too much. The thought coiled in her chest, pulling her back to that night 6 months ago, when his voice on the line had unraveled her exposé, her career, her certainty. She was adrift then, a ghost in her own story. But today, she wouldn't vanish. She flicked the switch, the machine whirred to life, its steady hum a fragile anchor. "Theo," she said aloud, voice cracking at first. "You fed me lies. Not just data, your version of me. The journalist who couldn't see through you." She paused, rewound, played it back. Too soft, too pleading. She leaned closer to the mic, eyes on the evidence pile. "I have the logs, the edits you buried. This isn't about us anymore. It's about the truth I own." Her mind raced, scripting counters to his deflections. He'll say it was for the greater good, that I was naive. No. She straightened, fingers tracing the recorder's edge, feeling its unyielding plastic. It didn't judge, it just captured, like Dr. Shore's sessions or Amara's quiet visits with tea and no questions. They reminded her she wasn't defined by his gaze. "I'm not here to beg forgiveness," she continued, firmer now, the words settling like stones in a riverbed. "I'm here to lay it bare and walk away whole." She stopped the tape, the silence thick but not empty. Theo's face flickered in her mind. Not the betrayer, but a shadow she could distance, archive on this reel. Her pulse steadied, resolve hardening like frost on glass. But as she gathered the papers, the question lingered, unspoken. How deep could she speak without him pulling the strings? With her rehearsal complete and resolve hardened, the moment of direct confrontation arrived, pulling Mara into the raw space where truths would clash. The dim light of the abandoned warehouse filtered through cracked windows, casting jagged shadows across the concrete floor. Mara stood rigid, her tape recorder clutched like a shield in her hand, its red light blinking steadily. Theo faced her across a makeshift table, his eyes hollowed by the weight of what he'd done. The air hummed with the faint whir of the device, capturing every breath, every fracture. "You think I did this to destroy you?" Theo's voice cracked, leaning forward, his fingers drumming the table's edge. "It was me I couldn't face. That lie you carry, needing their trust to exist, I mirrored it back at you. Every leak, every twisted fact. It was my fear screaming. I couldn't let you see how small I felt." Mara's cheeks burned, a flush of embarrassment creeping up her neck as his words hit too close, exposing the raw edge of her own doubt. She shifted, glancing at the shard of broken mirror propped against a crate nearby, a remnant from some forgotten shoot, its edges glinting like accusations. In its fractured surface, she caught a sliver of her reflection. Wide eyes, lips parted, the woman she'd been splintered and staring back. It mocked her vulnerability, the way his confession made her feel small again, unmoored. But she pressed record harder, the click echoing. Action surged through her. She wouldn't dissolve here. "Stop," she said, voice steadying as she pulled out her notebook, scribbling notes in sharp, deliberate strokes. "Facts, Theo, not your insecurities. You fed my story to the wolves. You let them rewrite me. I need clarity. Why? And don't you dare tell me it's about you." He reached out, hand hovering, as if to pull her back into their old rhythm. "Mara, you're vanishing. Let me explain. No. The word sliced the air, her embarrassment hardening into resolve. She stepped closer, the mirror shard catching her determined gaze now, a piece of herself sharpening into focus. Your betrayal doesn't define me. I won't let your version erase mine. I'm recording this because my truth leads now, not yours. Theo recoiled, sinking into his chair, the distance between them widening like a chasm. In her mind, Amara's voice echoed from therapy sessions. Steady, unyielding. You're whole. Hold the line. Mara's grip tightened on the recorder. Self-trust bloomed in her chest, fierce and unyielding. Could she keep these boundaries, preserve her truth against the pull? The question lingered, unanswered, as the tape spun on. Returning from the confrontation with raw footage in hand, Mara retreated to the editing bay, where she began to weave the fragments into her own narrative. The editing bay hummed with the low whir of the tape recorder, its spools turning like reluctant confessions. Mara hunched over the console, shadows pooling under her eyes from nights blurred into days. The screen flickered. Theo's voice crackled through the speakers, sharp and unyielding. You built your life on trust I couldn't give. She paused the playback, her finger hovering over the cut button, doubt coiling in her chest like smoke. Was this her story, or just echoes of his verdict? She replayed the segment, Theo's words slicing into the therapy session with Lila, where her own voice had trembled. Without endorsement, I vanish. The fracture stared back, his betrayal reframing her as collateral, not the architect. Her mind raced, a torrent of fragments. Amara's steady hand on her shoulder during the visit, the warmth of tea cutting through isolation, the empty chair in Lila's office, symbolizing the void Theo left. Mara dragged the cursor, snipping Theo's smug deflection, layering in her therapy admission instead. The raw admission that self-worth wasn't borrowed. Doubt gnawed. If she edited him out entirely, was she erasing the truth or claiming it? The tape recorder sat beside her, its microphone glinting like a watchful eye, capturing her breaths now, not his spin. She leaned closer, whispering a test reel. This isn't about your fracture. It's mine to mend. Sweat beaded on her forehead as she stitched the pieces. Evidence clips from their old collaboration intercut with her confrontation footage, where she'd held the recorder steady, his insecurities mirroring hers, but no longer defining the frame. Amara's voice wove in softly, a lifeline. You're whole, Mara. No one's permission required. The narrative shifted under her hands, from reactive shards to a deliberate mosaic. Doubt ebbed, replaced by a quiet acceptance, her pulse syncing with the machine's rhythm. She watched the timeline elongate, her voice emerging dominant, not drowned. Yet, as the final cut rendered, the question lingered in the dim light. How could this montage lock in her version, untainted by any other voice? With the edit complete and her narrative reclaimed, Mara returned to the solitude of her apartment for the final reflection, facing the camera to author her truth directly. The camera's lens stares back at me like a single, unblinking eye. Cold, expectant, waiting for the fracture to show. I sit in the dim glow of my apartment, the tripod steady on the scarred wooden table, its red light pulsing like a hesitant heartbeat. My hands tremble as I adjust the frame, fingers brushing the edge where the recorder once captured Theo's lies, now silenced in the edit. Doubt coils in my chest, thick as fog. What if this is just another echo of his version? What if speaking it aloud makes me vanish, unendorsed, unseen? I lean forward, the shadows under my eyes deepening in the close-up. I've been broken, I say, voice cracking like glass underfoot. The words hang in the quiet, the air heavy with the weight of what was stolen. Not just trust, but the shape I thought I knew. Theo's betrayal didn't just shatter the story, it splintered me, left me sifting through shards, each one whispering that my worth was his to give or take. Amara's visits, Lila's steady questions, they've held the pieces, but the pressure builds inside. The world's demand to perform wholeness, to nod and smile as if the cracks don't run deep. If I yield now, let their doubts define me. Who am I? A ghost in my own archive? My breath steadies. I choose. The lens reflects my resolve. No longer a judge, but a witness I control. This fracture is mine, I declare, the words gaining edge, slicing through the haze. My story isn't Theo's to rewrite, or yours to validate. I exist, whole in my brokenness, whether you believe it or not. The red light blinks on, recording the truth I author now, not react to. The doubt fades, replaced by a quiet fire. I am the one who decides. But as the take ends, the question lingers, unspoken in the silence. Can I truly claim this without needing their faith to hold it together?